dementia, connecting our lives to help us survive, so we spend our time to the fullest we can.
Hello, welcome to Dementia Life presented by Dementia Action Alliance. I'm happy to be your host, Gary Howard. During the Dementia Life podcast, we have conversations with inspiring people living with dementia and amazing people that care about us, those with dementia. My guest today is Mark Timmons. Mark is a photographer and has a journey with dementia and has early onset dementia. Let me take just a moment to give you a little bit about Mark, if I may. Mark is a photographer and a writer and poet living in Massachusetts. After his diagnosis of early onset dementia in 2016, photography became an important part of how he stays mentally engaged in life and also part of how he shares accurate information about dementia while at the same time eliminating stigmas that are attached to people living with dementia. You can view some of his work on his website at www.marktimmonsphotography.com. Mark, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me, Gary.
I have a couple of questions for you, if I may, if you're ready. And let me see if I can get some information and maybe help understand how photography works for you in your journey with dementia and your early onset. How does photography and your dementia, how do they work with each other? How does the photography help with dementia, or how does the dementia help you get your photography in place? How does that work for you? How do you do that?
Well, Gary, photography is a huge help to my journey living with dementia because, as you know, the world can get very chaotic, confusing, overwhelming for people living with dementia. And when I can escape with my camera to a beach, a countryside, a mountain, or a forest trail, it slows the world down for me. It gives me back more control over my environment, and familiar with the phrase "stop and smell the roses," and that's what photography does for me. It's a grounding technique. Use it as a grounding technique, because if you think of the rose analogy, not only am I stopping to smell the rose, but now I can touch the rose, I can feel the rose, I can look around me and see the entire rose garden or field of roses. So dementia puts us, I got that reversed. Photography puts a stop to the chaos of living in a world with dementia.
Okay, so I have to ask this question, and that is, how is it with photography being so technical and needing so many different types of lighting or angles or settings or flash settings? How is it with your dementia? How is it that you do that so well? Give me some of your hints or tools or your secrets.
I've had to adapt. I've had to change my approach over the years. Dementia, as you know, is a roller coaster that's constantly changing. The symptoms are constantly changing. And the trick is to adapt what I do to keep up with the changes to the dementia. There's more use of tripods, for example, instead of hand holding the camera when I have episodes of tremors. If my tripod isn't available to me and I have a sudden onset of tremors, both my camera and my software at home that I do a lot of my editing in offer me image stabilization possibilities. A lot of work happens after the shot has been taken back home in the computer, in the editing software, where I can adjust for things like exposure or lighting, things that weren't quite right when I actually looked through the lens and took the picture. reminds me of this question reminds me of a quote from Ansel Adams. Ansel Adams was a very prolific photographer, probably one of the most well-known photographers in America. And he once said that his goal was to take one marketable photo every month. That's all he wanted. So if I come home from a photo shoot and find that the entire shoot of 100, 150 photos came out completely washed out and not usable, not savable through editing software, I remind myself of that and just tell myself, I'll get it next time.
Again, you know how complex I think it is what you do anyway, but how much time do you think you spend in a 7-day period on this hours-wise for your craft?
Gary, that's a difficult question to answer. It varies, I would say, week to week. There are a lot of other factors that go into how much time I have available. My schedule, of course, plays a big role in that, and also the occurrence and severity of that particular week's set of symptoms. There are days when it's just not safe for me to leave the house and go wander in a forest to take photographs. I might get lost or get confused about where I am. So, there's no answer to that question. But if I was to average it out, over the course of a year, I would say I spend around 10 to 15 hours a week.
Now, this might be a silly question, but I know I have to do this now when I'm out and about. Do you use your GPS even if you're just on a walk to keep track of yourself, or how do you do that where you don't get lost if you're going and just hanging out looking for some pictures? Because I'm sure you go deep into some of the forest areas over there.
That's actually, it's an important question to ask, Gary, and it's something that I have only recently started to really utilize because I am experiencing more episodes of becoming lost and turned around. And so I do use GPS type technology now. So connected with certain friends so that they know where I am if I lose my way.
That's excellent. Of course, that's important for all of us to remember. We have to have that circle because it is not an I situation. It is a team situation when it comes to dementia, as we all sadly know. And without the caregivers and the helpers, we would have no help at all, which would really diminish a lot of us. I have one more big question, and it's going to be, you talk about your art shows with your photography, or maybe they're not art shows, but they're shows. Kind of, if you can go into that a little bit, because I know you use that for your advocacy, and go into that for just a minute, if you would.
Sure. I like to use my photography as a tool to promote advocacy, to promote dementia information, accurate dementia information. So if I have a gallery show, for example, I normally give a talk, and the talk is always about dementia, about living with dementia, about the stigmas surrounding dementia, about Dementia Action Alliance. And using the photography at my show, it conveys a message to the people in attendance that what they may have thought they knew about dementia is not accurate. Now, if I have repeat shows in the same locations, I feel I need to do something extra, something additional. So if I'm doing a repeat show, I try to add a new element. I try to learn a new element that I can add to my photography and display it at a repeat gallery. For example, A couple of months back, I had a gallery show in a repeat location. And now there's two new concepts including now in my photography. One is taking some of the poetry, some of the writings that I've done that you mentioned when you introduced me, and I thank you for mentioning that, as well as my photography. I can now superimpose a poem on top of a photograph of mine and display that. I can also add digital images that I can take from certain software providers on the internet and add digital elements to photographs to give them kind of a otherworldly look to them. And what these demonstrate when a patron is looking at them on the wall is not only am I someone living with dementia who can still create, who can still contribute to society and still has talents and abilities, but I'm showing these repeat patrons that I'm also capable of learning new skills. And these are all blasting the stigmas, in my opinion, that people have when it comes to what they think they know about individuals living with dementia. You know, when I speak to these groups at my shows, I like to tell them my backstory and explain to them that I used to be a tax accountant and I'm no longer able to perform the duties of a tax accountant. And I tell them that, you know, that chapter of my book is over. You know, the chapter called Mark the Tax Accountant has closed, but that doesn't mean the entire book is finished. It's just a chapter. So I turn the page and I have many, many new chapters to write, many, many new chapters to live. There's Mark the photographer. There's Mark the writer and poet. There's Mark the speaker. There's Mark the advocate. These are all things, these are all chapters that didn't exist before dementia. And it's about embracing your new reality. I have dementia, but dementia doesn't have me. And it's about embracing your new reality and finding a new purpose and taking that purpose to live a fulfilling life, because there's still a lot of life to live.
Absolutely. Dementia is not a death sentence, and we're not going to let it be one. So that's how that works out there. Well, Mark, I really appreciate your time today. It was so good to get to talk to you about some of these things, especially get to learn more about your photography. Again, everybody, www.marktimmonsphotography.com. See his work. I don't know how often he updates his website, but I know he's got new work all the time, so please go check it out. Again, Mark, thanks. I appreciate you coming and joining us here today to share the information about your photography, and I hope to keep watching and seeing it. I'd like to thank you for joining DAA's This Dementia Life. Please visit our website at daanow.org. View our other podcasts, find valuable resources, find ways to connect with other people living with dementia through our virtual discussion and virtual engagement programs. Dementia Action Alliance is committed to enhancing lives, connecting people, and increasing understanding. I'm your host, Gary Howard. Remember, the brain may forget, but the heart never will. Thanks, and have a great day.
To help us survive, so we spend our time to the fullest we can.